Hi there, I'm Angela at Ottawa English. So one of the most common things that test takers worry about is having ideas, actually thinking of the ideas. On the whole, they're far less concerned about pulling together their written or spoken response, but actually coming up with the idea in the first place is really, really big. So I thought I'd make a couple of videos with ideas for common test topics in both IELTS and CELPIP and show you how to form a simple paragraph that elaborates on each idea with those all-important supporting details. So in this video, we're going to focus on the very common topic of transportation, specifically ideas related to how private cars make mass transit or public transportation look good. There are several things that we could say about mass transit and private cars. So let's start with cost. Mass transit tends to be cheap and easy to pay for. It's much cheaper to use public transit than to use a car. And so public transit is great for students, low-income earners, people who are trying to save money, or people who'd rather spend a little more money on shopping and entertainment. In some cities, even they entice people to use public transit by offering free transportation during the rush hour. Now, cars, on the other hand, are expensive to own because you have to spend money maintaining and repairing a car, buying fuel and insurance, and paying for parking. So not everyone can afford these ongoing expenses. If I was going to write a paragraph about mass transit as with regard to cost, it might look something like this. So the purple is the statement, the blue is the explanation, and the orange is the example. So the purple statement reads, mass transit tends to be a very cost-effective way to travel. Then the blue explanation reads, because there are no additional charges for maintaining, repairing, insuring, fueling, or parking the equipment. And the orange example reads, a recent study from the University of Calgary estimated that the minimum weekly cost of public transit is about $20, whereas the weekly expenditure for car ownership, with all its additional expenses, is around $120. So it's really important that you develop your response with all three of these marking criteria. So each paragraph, each of your body paragraphs should have that statement, the purple part, the explanation in blue, and then your example. The paragraph for cost for private cars might look something like this. The purple statement reads, owning and running cars tends to be expensive. The blue explanation reads, because of all the money that has to be spent paying for maintenance and repairs, buying insurance and fuel, and covering the costs of parking. And then the orange example reads, a recent study from the University of Calgary estimated that the minimum weekly cost of car ownership is around $120, whereas the minimum weekly expenditure on public transit without those additional expenses is about $20. All right, so we could also talk about how transportation contributes to urban sprawl. And here we might say that public transit uses space more efficiently. And so cities don't have to build as many roads or parking lots and can use some of that freed up land for parks, bike lanes, and pedestrian zones. A nice little phrase to use here is sustainable urban development. For cars, on the other hand, They consume a lot of urban space because they need roads to travel on and places to park. So I guess unsustainable urban development would work here. The paragraph for urban sprawl for mass transit might look like this. Public transit tends to use land area very efficiently because large numbers of people are moved around in tightly knit groups. That means cities don't have to build as many roads or parking lots and can use some of that freed up space for parks, bike lanes, and pedestrian zones. New York Central Park offers an example of this sustainable urban development, where mass transit shuttles the population through the city, leaving enough space for an enormous natural area in its core. The paragraph for urban sprawl for private cars might look like this. Cars tend to consume large amounts of land, contributing to urban sprawl because they need roads to drive on and places to park. As populations grow, the cities that house them also have to grow, either outwards or upwards. Cities that encourage car ownership tend to have little choice but to grow outwards. We could also talk about pollution. So trains, buses and trams, different forms of mass transit, offer environmental benefits because they produce far fewer emissions per person compared to private cars. And so that helps to reduce the air pollution and combat climate change. And essentially, if the bulk of people are using mass transit, it's nice to be outside. The air smells good. Now, cars, on the other hand, contribute to air pollution because they emit pollutants like nitrogen oxides and carbon monoxide. And this poor air quality contributes to asthma, respiratory illnesses, and other health problems in people. And of course, there's always the cars being a source of greenhouse gases because of the carbon dioxide they emit, which is a key contributor to global warming and climate change. And you could also mention noise pollution because car engines and traffic create noise, which affects the quality of life, especially in urban areas. So the paragraph for pollution from mass transit might look like this. Mass transit makes a relatively small per capita contribution to pollution because one engine is hauling a large number of people. For example, since a single bus can carry up to 70 people at a time, that means there are 69 fewer car engines spewing out contaminants that pollute the air and contributing to noise pollution. The paragraph for pollution for cars might look like this. Private cars make a significant per capita contribution to pollution because each car engine emits air contaminants that impact both global warming and people's health. For example, in some cities where car ownership is a necessity, people suffer from a range of respiratory diseases and are often forced to wear masks and run air purifiers just to be able to breathe. And you could also talk about congestion. So public transit reduces traffic congestion because fewer cars on the road means less traffic, faster travel times, lower stress for everyone, and greater productivity because you can relax, read, and work during your commute. On the other hand, too many cars lead to traffic jams, especially in big cities. And this congestion wastes time, increases stress, and lowers productivity. The paragraph for congestion for mass transit might look like this. Mass transit tends to reduce traffic congestion along with the pollution that all those virtually stationary cars create. Fewer cars on the road means less traffic, faster travel times, lower stress, and greater productivity because you can relax, read, and work during your commute. In Australia, recent estimates indicate that each train on Sydney's railways removes approximately 1,000 cars from its road, alleviating many of the issues associated with urban congestion. For the private car, your paragraph might look like this. Private cars tend to increase the amount of congestion on the roads, especially during the rush hour. That congestion, where vehicles are virtually stationary for lengthy periods of time, results in increased stress, wasted time, and lost productivity, to the point where some cities provide free mass transit during rush hours in their attempt to alleviate this productivity bottleneck. And then we can also talk about accidents. So we might say that public transport is statistically safer than driving a private car because fewer accidents and fatalities occur per kilometre travelled. With cars, on the other hand, the risk of collisions goes up, as do the number of injuries and economic losses. And so the paragraph for your mass transit might look like this. Taking public transport tends to be safer than driving a private car because people are less likely to reach the frustration and exhaustion levels that accompany slow-moving traffic and result in accidents, both with and without fatalities. A recent study of the accident statistics gathered in a German city revealed that fewer accidents and fatalities occur per kilometre travelled when people used mass transit rather than private cars. And for your cars, you might say that driving a private car is considered to be the least safe way to travel because people tend to get irritable when they get into slow-moving or stationary traffic. That irritation and frustration affects their decision-making, resulting in accidents. A recent study of the accident statistics gathered in a German city revealed that fewer accidents and fatalities occur per kilometre travelled when people used mass transit rather than private cars. So there you go. You have 10 different ideas for your paragraphs based on cost, urban sprawl, pollution, congestion, and accidents. In the next video, we'll take a look at the good side of cars, the bad side of public transportation. So I hope you'll join me in part 2. For now, thanks for watching. And if you'd like some help with your preparation, do give me a call at 613-614-6460. Bye-bye now.